He thought he was walking into a new life with my best friend. What he didn't realize was I'd been preparing for this day for years. This is how I sent him 12 boxes, and why the last one left him shattered. For most of my adult life, I believed we were a team. 30 years of marriage builds that kind of quiet certainty where your life becomes intertwined, not just in finances or routines, but in muscle memory. I knew when he liked his coffee, which shirts he'd wear on Mondays, the sound of his footfall in the hall before he even appeared. We had 2 children, both grown and out in the world. The house had grown quieter, but it wasn't empty. I filled the silence with gardening, volunteer work, weekend calls with the kids. And then there was Claire, my best friend of nearly 25 years. She was a fixture at our family dinners, birthday parties, and lazy Sunday barbecues. She knew our stories, our inside jokes, our rhythm. I'm Marianne. I'm 58 years old, and until a year ago, I thought I'd spend the rest of my life beside the same man I married at 28. Looking back, I see the subtle shifts. The way he started coming home later, the new cologne I didn't buy him, the way Claire suddenly stopped dropping by without calling first. I told myself not to overthink. After 3 decades, couples hit lulls, I thought, and friends grow busy. But it was the week after our 30th anniversary when everything unraveled. He came into the kitchen while I was slicing fruit. No anger, no emotion, just a practiced, steady voice. "I'm leaving," he said. "I've met someone else." I didn't understand at first. I remember asking him who. He didn't answer right away. Just stood there, hands in his pockets, waiting for the ground beneath me to give. Then he said it. Claire, my best friend, my confidant, the woman who helped me pick out the silver dress I wore for our last anniversary dinner. Her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just stood there, paring knife still in my hand, apple slices drying on the cutting board. He said they hadn't meant for it to happen, like it was some romantic accident, like their betrayal had tripped and fallen into bed. He had a bag already packed. She was waiting outside, apparently. He said he didn't want to make a scene. I remember hearing the front door close behind him and noticing how quiet the house felt. A silence so thick, it felt like it had mass. My home didn't echo with memories that night. It echoed with absence. And that's where it started. Not the end of my marriage, but the beginning of something much colder, much quieter. A kind of grief that didn't scream. It observed. It took notes. The kitchen stayed as it was, the half-sliced apple still browning on the counter. I sat on the edge of the couch in the same robe I'd worn the day before, staring at nothing. The house was so quiet. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounded accusatory. I kept asking myself how I hadn't seen it. How many signs had I ignored? How many times had I defended Claire to others? Brushed off the comments about how close she and my husband seemed at parties, how her hand lingered too long on his arm. I had mistaken disloyalty for charm. There's a particular kind of humiliation that comes when the betrayal is not just romantic, but intimate in every facet of your life. Claire had been there when my daughter broke her arm in 5th grade. She was at our table every Thanksgiving. I had once called her the sister I never had. Now I couldn't say her name without my throat closing. I didn't cry much, not the first week. My tears felt stuck behind a dam. What came out instead was silence, stillness. I barely answered calls from my kids. I couldn't bring myself to tell them. What would I say? That their father had thrown away 30 years like it was last season's wardrobe? That he left without shame? The second week, I found myself scrolling through old photos. My thumb hesitated over a shot of Claire and me at the lake house, laughing, sunburned, drinks in hand. I deleted it. Then I deleted more. Hundreds, actually. It was a funeral of sorts, a slow, digital burial. And then, one night around 2 a.m., I finally opened my email. Something told me to check the shared accounts. Just a feeling. Sure enough, I saw hotel reservations from 2 months ago, booked under his name. Fancy resort spa packages, dinner bills for 2. They hadn't just started, they had been celebrating their betrayal long before he told me. I felt something shift in me then. It wasn't rage, not quite. It was cleaner than that, more focused, like a lens snapping into clarity. He had built his exit carefully, knowing I trusted him. He made sure everything was ready before he dropped the bomb. She was there to catch him the moment he stepped out. There was no stumble, no second guessing, just a clean cut. And I, Marianne, the loyal wife, the dependable friend, was meant to collapse quietly in the background while they moved forward. But I didn't collapse. Not quite. I started moving differently. I made a list, not of things to do, but of what was mine, what I had sacrificed for, the equity I'd helped build, the savings accounts I had watched like a hawk during the lean years, the pension, the stocks, the house, especially the house. That night, I made my first phone call to a lawyer I remembered from a neighbor's ugly divorce years ago, a quiet, sharp woman with eyes like flint. I didn't tell anyone yet, not even my children. This wasn't for them. This was for me. Let him think I was broken. Let her believe she had won. Let them move into their new beginning with champagne and oblivious joy. Because while they toasted, I started preparing the end. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, everything about the space neat and sterile. Diplomas framed on the walls, a quiet ticking clock. The woman across from me, Elena, reviewed the file I had started to compile. Property records, tax filings, joint account statements. I had color-coded tabs for everything. I want to protect what's mine, I told her. She didn't blink. Then let's begin. For years, I had deferred to my husband in all financial matters. I wasn't naive, I always knew where things stood, but I'd stepped back, trusting he'd act in our mutual best interest. It turned out he'd been using that trust as a cover while he planned a clean exit. But I had been beside him for every milestone, every major decision, every real estate investment. My name was on every asset that mattered, and more importantly, I remembered the details. I started visiting the bank more frequently, quietly moved some accounts into my name alone, froze the ones he didn't think I'd remember. There was an old CD from years ago, something we opened when our youngest left for college. I cashed it out. The house was mine. I'd inherited it from my parents, though we'd paid the mortgage together for years. Legally, he had a claim, but sentimentally and strategically, it was always mine. I met with an appraiser, then a financial planner, then an estate attorney. I was polite, calm, meticulous. Not because I wanted revenge, not yet. At this point, it was about control, about rebuilding a map in a world that had been flipped upside down. I stopped answering his texts. He'd sent a few in the weeks after he left. Nothing apologetic, just logistics. Have you seen my leather briefcase? Can you forward the mortgage statement? I left them all unread. Claire didn't reach out at all, which somehow made it worse. She had simply removed herself from the narrative as if her betrayal needed no explanation. In the third week, I called my daughter. I told her everything. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Do you need me to come home?" "No," I said. "I need you to live your life. I'll handle this." It was the first time I had said it aloud, and I meant it. The next day, I went to the storage unit we had rented 5 years earlier during a house renovation. I took inventory. There were antique books, heirloom dishes from his mother, even his old vinyl collection. I made a list of everything, not out of spite, out of strategy. This wasn't a tantrum, it was a chess game, and I had just moved my queen. By the end of that month, Elena had filed for divorce on my behalf. She called it a position of advantage. He'd be served soon. I didn't ask when, I just waited. And in that waiting, something settled in me. I wasn't going to win by screaming. I wasn't going to win by begging. I was going to win by being the woman he forgot I was, precise, quiet, and absolutely unwilling to be discarded. He didn't expect the papers. That much was clear from the stunned voicemail he left 2 days after being served. His voice was tight, confused, and offended, like I had ambushed him. "You could have at least talked to me first." I didn't respond. Not then. I had nothing to say that wouldn't empower him. He assumed I would wait, that I would stall, that I would cry and bargain and wait by the phone for explanations or apologies. But I had already given 30 years to the man who stood in my kitchen and told me he was leaving with my best friend. That was his chance to talk, and he chose silence. Now it was my turn. I had no interest in drama or public confrontation. What I wanted was much more precise. I wanted him to feel irrelevant in the life he abandoned. I started by closing all the credit cards with both our names. I opened new ones under mine alone. He hadn't realized how many bills ran through accounts I managed. It was only a matter of time before his card was declined at a dinner date. I wondered if Claire would offer to pay. Next came the car. Technically, it was registered in both our names, but I had paid off the loan with money from my late mother's inheritance. With my attorney's help, we arranged for the title to be transferred fully to me. I sent him a letter, notarized, requesting he return it or buy out my half. I knew he wouldn't want to make a payment. That car carried memories, and he didn't want to owe me for anything. He returned it 2 weeks later. It smelled like her perfume. I had it detailed the same day. But my favorite act was the smallest one. Each month, I packed one box of his things and sent it to him. One small box. Nothing emotional, just pieces of his life reduced to objects in cardboard, his cufflinks, a bundle of old work ties, college yearbooks, the vinyl record I knew he loved, but that I now couldn't stand to see. Each package arrived quietly, always with tracking, always signed for. No notes, no drama. I never skipped a month. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was simply returning what belonged to him, slowly, deliberately, like unwinding a thread. Claire had no part in any of it. She remained invisible, which suited me just fine. Let her enjoy the full weight of what she'd won. Let her learn the rhythms of his moods, the dull way he drifts when he's unhappy. Let her feel the same blank stares I had once mistaken for deep thought. While they played house, I changed the locks. I updated my will. I met with a tax advisor. I even reviewed our old vacation home agreement and discovered a technicality that, if challenged, could force a reassessment of his buy-in. I filed the paperwork. He didn't see it coming. By month 5, I had full control over my finances, the house, and all remaining joint property. The divorce was progressing, civilly, on paper, but the gap between us had become a canyon. People around me started to notice the change. "You look different," one neighbor said, "like you're breathing better." I was. I started going to the gym, not out of vanity, but out of momentum. I joined a pottery class. I bought myself a secondhand piano and began taking lessons from a local teacher who came on Tuesdays. I hadn't touched a piano in 20 years. I said very little about the divorce, not because I was embarrassed. I just wasn't interested in gossip. The story wasn't over yet, and I intended to write the ending myself. There was one moment I didn't expect. A Sunday afternoon. The doorbell rang. I opened it and found him standing there. He looked smaller, not physically, but energetically, like the scaffolding had fallen away and all that was left was a man who didn't understand what he'd dismantled. He asked if he could talk. I said no. He said he missed the house. I told him the house didn't miss him. He stood there for a while, expecting, I don't know, mercy, reconsideration, a softened heart. What he got was stillness. I didn't shout. I didn't weep. I just looked at him until he finally walked away. That night, I sent the next box. Inside, a sweater he'd worn the day we moved in. I didn't include a note. I never did. Here's the next section. Freedom didn't come all at once. At first, it arrived in strange, tiny moments, waking up without the weight of waiting, opening a closet and realizing I didn't need to justify how much space I took up, cooking only what I liked, lighting candles he used to complain gave him a headache. It was silence. but not the painful kind that had haunted those first few nights. This was chosen silence. It was mine. I didn't rush to fill the emptiness. I let it stay for a while. I learned to walk around it, to sit in it without flinching. It was the first time in decades that I belonged only to myself. I started seeing a therapist. At first, I thought it would just be a formality, a step in the moving on checklist. But those sessions became an anchor. We didn't talk much about him. We talked about me, about how I'd spent so much of my life smoothing edges, mediating, swallowing frustration. It wasn't just the betrayal, I told her once. It was how easily I disappeared from the story. She nodded. So, rewrite the story. And I did. I redecorated the guest room, turned it into a little art studio. Nothing fancy, just space for watercolor, paper, and soft jazz on weekend mornings. I booked a solo trip to Vermont for fall, rented a cabin, took long walks, drank hot cider, and read for hours. No one interrupted. No one asked me to turn down the light. I didn't miss them. I joined a local book club. We met every other Thursday in a small cafe. Most of the women were older, all of them fierce and funny and sharp. They had stories too. Some were widowed, others divorced. One had never married at all and said she'd never had the urge to. We listened to one another. We laughed more than I expected. And slowly, I stopped needing to talk about him, because the more full my life became, the less room there was for his ghost. My children came home for the holidays. They noticed the changes. My daughter hugged me and whispered, "I'm proud of you." My son cleaned the gutters without being asked and brought me coffee just the way I liked it. They didn't ask about their father. They didn't need to. That winter, I baked a pecan pie for myself. Just one. No party, no gathering. Just me, a slice of pie, and the satisfaction of knowing I didn't have to share. The divorce was finalized on a Wednesday. I remember because the letter arrived while I was pruning the rose bushes. I wiped the dirt from my hands, sat on the porch, and opened the envelope slowly. Just like that, it was over. No dramatic showdown, no drawn-out court battle, just a few signatures, a final split of the last account, and a document that officially untied what had once felt unbreakable. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just sat there with the paper in my lap and breathed in the weightlessness. He got very little in the end, not because I was vindictive, but because I was prepared. Everything I had done, I'd done quietly and legally. I never stooped to his level. I never tried to ruin him. I simply protected what was mine. He moved in with Claire, though I heard through mutual friends that things weren't as idyllic as they'd hoped. She had expected to inherit a man softened by divorce, a house she didn't build, and a life she didn't earn. What she got instead was a man uncomfortable in borrowed spaces and bitter about lost power. Months passed, life moved forward. I learned how to use power tools. I started volunteering at a local shelter. I grew stronger, not in the movie montage kind of way, but in the quiet, unshakable kind. The kind that's earned in silence, in survival, and choosing not to shrink. Then, one morning, almost a year to the day since he left, I received a letter. Not from him, from Claire. It was short, polite, a few sentences, vague and carefully worded. She said she regretted how things had happened, that she missed our friendship, that she hoped in time I could forgive her. I read it twice, folded it back up, and dropped it in the trash without a word. Because that letter wasn't for me. It was for her guilt, her need for redemption, her image of herself as a good person who had made a messy mistake. But I had no space left in my life for people who confuse apologies with absolution. That same afternoon, I mailed the last box to my ex-husband. Inside was the silver picture frame that once sat on our mantle, the one that held our wedding photo. But this time, it was empty. No note, no explanation, just the frame, just the space where we used to be. The revenge, if you want to call it that, wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It didn't involve shouting or courtroom theatrics. It was in the slow, steady reclaiming of my life, in not becoming the woman they expected me to be. Broken, bitter, dependent, I became someone else entirely, someone free. These days, I sit on my porch with coffee in hand and watch the morning light hit the garden just right. The same house, but it feels different now. It's lighter. It breathes with me. I don't think about him much. I don't need to, because while he was building his escape, I was unknowingly building my rebirth. And I left him with nothing, not because I took everything, but because he gave it all away the moment he underestimated the woman he walked away from. If this story moved you, if you've ever been left behind, underestimated, or betrayed, then you already know silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. Subscribe for more true to life stories of quiet revenge, emotional survival, and powerful reinvention. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is becoming the person they never saw coming. Don't forget to like, comment, and share with someone who needs to hear this today.